The air in the command center carried a manufactured chill. It was a mix of recycled oxygen, a faint metallic tang from the server racks, and the lingering bitterness of yesterday's coffee. Deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Station Neptune existed as its own world of concrete, titanium, and humming silence. The only light came from the screens, glowing green and amber, numbers flowing endlessly, painting a picture of the abyss outside through sonar returns, magnetic anomalies, and intercepted signals. She stood before the central tactical display, still in the room's constant motion. Her gray fatigues were plain, without rank or insignia. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, functional knot. Her face appeared unremarkable, composed of quiet features that avoided attention. Her eyes were the color of a winter sea, and they did not merely scan the screens. They absorbed them. Her hands were clasped loosely behind her back. Her posture was relaxed but perfectly balanced, like a predator at rest. She had been on the station for 2 days, observing in silence. The crew was told only that she was a civilian oversight analyst from Fleet Command, sent to review operational readiness. The explanation was thin and created unease. In the pressurized confines of Epsilon, every unknown variable was a potential threat. The men on the station were exceptional. The technicians possessed brilliant, hermit-like minds. The security team consisted of elite naval special warfare operators assigned to protect the planet's most sensitive intelligence. They were like lions in a cage, energy coiled tight in the sterile environment. Commander Hawke embodied that tension. He was a large man, filling the narrow corridors with his presence. His voice was low and commanding, trained for immediate obedience. His record was legendary, a string of impossible successes in the world's most dangerous corners. He did not trust the quiet woman who watched from the edge of the command center. Her stillness struck him not as discipline, but as timidity. He judged her quiet, nondescript appearance as weakness rather than professionalism. To him, she was just another civilian, a paper-pushing bureaucrat tossed into a world built for warriors. His disdain hung in the air, heavy and unmissable. The crew sensed it immediately and mirrored it in their behavior. They avoided her, spoke in muted tones when she was nearby, and abruptly fell silent whenever she glanced their way. Only one person seemed indifferent to the tension. Chief Engineer Larson, the lead systems engineer, paid her no heed. Lean and wiry, with grease-stained hands, he treated the station not as a machine, but as a living network of systems, circuits, and airflows. He had been observing her closely, noting how she followed multiple data streams at once, never focusing on the main tactical display but on the hidden diagnostic panels scrolling indecipherable code. A mix of curiosity and caution tugged at him, like a man stumbling across fresh tracks in the wilderness, aware that the creature they belonged to could be dangerous. The inevitable confrontation arrived without warning. A distant seismic sensor, 185 miles across the abyssal plain, picked up a tremor. Nothing unusual on its own, a minor shake from the planet's shifting crust, but station procedure demanded a response. The watch officer called it out. Condition yellow. Seismic event detected. Grid 1412, commencing standard diagnostics. Hawke, who had been overseeing weapons maintenance drills, moved into the command center with a deliberate, measured pace, every step asserting his authority. He reached the console, looming over the young lieutenant who quickly stepped aside. "I'll handle it," he said, leaving no room for debate. He leaned over the controls, his massive hands braced on the desk, a performance both for the team in the doorway and the silent woman at the tactical display. Run a complete structural scan. Inspect all sensor housings for damage. I want results in 2 minutes. His commands were sharp, precise, and methodical, executed exactly as the emergency protocol dictated. In this situation, the protocols themselves were practically unnecessary. The system handled everything automatically. Finally, the quiet woman moved. She stepped silently toward a secondary console, her attention locked on a small, easily overlooked screen showing gravimetric fluctuations. Hawke caught the motion from the corner of his eye. It interrupted the rhythm of his performance. He straightened, focusing entirely on her. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Do you need something, analyst?" His tone was sweet, almost syrupy, but every word carried a sting sharper than any shout. She did not glance at him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the display. "The initial shock wave had a precursor harmonic," she said calmly. "The waveform is irregular, simply a statement of fact." Hawke's expression hardened. She was challenging the event and worse, speaking in the technical language of his domain as if she belonged there. He strode toward her, positioning himself between her and the console, forcing her to take a step back. It was a textbook display of dominance. He peeked at the screen she had been monitoring. The lines looked like nonsense, a chaotic tangle with no obvious meaning. He curled his lip in a smirk. "We already have protocols for this," he said loudly, ensuring the entire room heard. "They're built by people who actually know what they're doing. We don't need outside commentary on anomalous waveforms." He waved toward the main display, now returning to normal. "See? The system is functioning. Everything is under control." He turned back to her, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "This is a restricted operational area. Perhaps you should return to your reports." Some of his men snickered quietly. For the first time, she looked directly at him. Nothing flickered in her eyes. No anger, no fear, no irritation, just a hollow, chilling stillness that was far more unsettling than any outburst could have been. She stood her ground, unhurried, unshaken. After a long, silent moment, she gave a single, subtle nod and turned away. Her steps made no sound on the metal deck. Hawke watched her leave, a triumphant grin on his face. He had reasserted the hierarchy, restored the order he valued. "All right," he bellowed to the room. "Back to work. Let's get that maintenance log." The tension in the room finally eased, and the station settled back into its usual rhythm. But Chief Larson, watching from his engineering alcove, felt a chill coil in his gut. He had witnessed Hawke asserting his authority, and he had also seen the woman remain entirely unmoved. And in that moment, Larson knew something undeniable. This was not just a commander intimidating a civilian. He had watched a man provoke a sleeping predator. Her composure was no sign of weakness. It was honed in a crucible few could imagine. She was the daughter of Grand Admiral Harrison, a figure who was less a man than a legend within the modern Navy. Harrison had been a strategist capable of perceiving battles in dimensions others could not even fathom. And he had not simply raised a daughter, he had forged a weapon. Her childhood had been spent in the holographic strategy halls of the War College, her lessons wrapped in tactical simulations rather than nursery rhymes. Her father drilled into her that the sea was indifferent, an amoral force that recognized only one thing: truth. The truth of numbers, of physics, of human error. Ego was poison, he taught. Ego clouded judgment, obscured reality, and sank fleets. "Never trust your rank," he would say, his voice low and grinding like shifting tectonic plates. "Trust the data. Rank is given by fallible men. Data is the language of reality itself." She absorbed those lessons fully. She became a prodigy in quantum communications and predictive modeling, able to perceive order in chaos that no one else could see. She authored the algorithms that underpinned the surveillance systems on Station Neptune, a secret known only to a select few at the highest levels of fleet command. Her rise through intelligence was swift but unobtrusive. She never sought recognition. Her focus was always the next problem, the next puzzle, the next hidden layer to uncover. Then came the Atlantic Rift incident, a catastrophic failure during a joint forces exercise. A new submarine, the USS Shadow Strike, suffered a reactor containment breach. The task force commander was much like Hawke, confident, decorated, a man who trusted instinct over the anxious warnings of his engineers. He had pushed the submarine well beyond its certified safety limits, convinced that the warning lines on the screens were just cautious estimates from timid engineers. Her father, Grand Admiral Harrison, had been present during the exercise, watching closely. He had argued with the commander, pleaded with him to heed the data. The commander had laughed, brushing aside the admiral's warnings, calling him an old man past his nerve. Months later, the black box recovered from the wreck captured the final moments. The commander's arrogant dismissal, her father's last calm words, "The numbers do not lie." Then nothing. Her father's death did not shatter her. It hardened her. It forged her discipline into something tougher than steel and transformed her professional creed into a solemn vow. She would never let ego destroy lives again. She would honor her father not through grief, but through an unflinching, dispassionate pursuit of mastery. She accepted flag rank, rising to admiral, not for authority, but for access. Access to the machinery, to stations like Epsilon, to see the human element that no algorithm could predict. She came not as a commander, but as a diagnostician, examining whether the arrogance that had killed her father had spread. In Hawke, she saw the answer. His dismissive smirk, his petty displays of dominance, these were not personal insults. They were symptoms of a disease she had come to identify and correct. 50 minutes later, the true tremor struck. No warning preceded it. The station shuddered violently, as if the foundations themselves were being ripped apart. Deck plates buckled, hurling men from their feet. Overhead, light panels shattered, showering plastic and glass. A deep, bone-rattling groan rolled through the structure, the sound of thousands of tons of titanium bending past their limits. Red emergency lights strobing across the command center painted the panicked faces in grotesque hues. The station computer spoke, calm and mechanical, its placid voice a terrifying contrast to the chaos. Warning: catastrophic structural failure detected. Hull integrity compromised in sectors Gamma and Delta. The reactor initiated an automatic scram. Life support switched to emergency backup. The main displays went dark, then flickered back to life, drowning in a storm of error messages and cascading failure warnings. The station was blind, dying. Panic spread like wildfire. Men shouted. Some stood frozen, disbelief slackening their faces. Commander Hawke sprang to his feet, blood streaking down his forehead from a cut. "Damage control team, suit up. Seal all Gamma sector hatches. Get me an outer hull pressure reading." His voice carried authority, but beneath it, a ragged edge of fear was unmistakable. His orders meant nothing. The teams were trapped, the internal comms silent, the pressure sensors dead. He was a warrior without weapons, a commander without an army. His usual dominance, built on presence and intimidation, was irrelevant against the unforgiving laws of physics. He grabbed a junior officer by the collar. "Get me comms to the surface now." "They're gone, sir," the officer gasped. "The primary array, it's gone. The shock must have torn it off." Hawke shoved him away, face a mask of furious impotence. The station groaned again, longer this time, a metallic wail. A fine dust of concrete floated down from the ceiling. They were trapped, miles beneath the ocean, in a steel coffin being crushed by the water above. Amid the chaos, she moved. She had not been knocked down by the tremor. When it hit, she had simply bent her knees, absorbing the shock with the fluid control of a trained fighter. Now she rose. Her stillness was gone, replaced by a precision of movement that left nothing wasted. Every motion had a purpose, every step deliberate. She ignored the main command consoles, the territory of the panicked and ineffective. She went to a small, neglected maintenance panel along the far wall, a place no one ever touched. With bare hands, she ripped the cover off, the metal shrieking in protest. Inside was a tangle of fiber optic cables and a small hardened keyboard, the emergency manual override. Her fingers flew over the keys. She wasn't typing words. She was speaking directly in machine code, communicating with the station's crippled systems. Chief Larson, clinging to a bulkhead nearby, watched in stunned silence, struggling to grasp what he was witnessing. The code racing across the small maintenance display was unlike anything Larson had ever seen. It was dense, merciless, and beautiful in its precision, moving at a speed that barely seemed human. She was cutting straight through corrupted software layers, bypassing safeguards and interfaces, reaching deep into the station's most primitive control core. Hawke shouted over the chaos, his voice cracking under strain. He demanded to know what she was doing, ordered her away from the console, warned her that the system was restricted. He moved toward her with purpose, ready to drag her away by force. She did not look up. Her voice sliced through the noise, cold and absolute. She called out to Chief Larson. He flinched, startled to hear his name. She asked about the tertiary coolant pump, whether the manual valve behind Panel 9er Bravo was still reachable. His mind, a living map of the station, pictured it instantly. It was accessible, yes, but unused for years and likely frozen solid. She told him to get a wrench and open it. He had 90 seconds. The order made no sense. The tertiary system was a backup to a backup, practically forgotten. Activating it now, with primary systems collapsing, defied every protocol. But there was no doubt in her voice. Larson did not question it. He turned and ran. Hawke reached her and clamped a hand on her shoulder, demanding obedience. She stopped typing. Slowly, she turned her head and looked at him. The emptiness in her eyes was gone. What replaced it was intensity so fierce it made the seasoned commander recoil. She addressed him quietly, her voice dropping to a near whisper that carried more force than shouting. She explained that the tremor they felt was only the initial pressure wave. The secondary shearing wave would arrive in less than 6 minutes, far stronger. She let the silence stretch as the meaning settled. Sealing the station, she said, would turn it rigid. When the next wave hit, resonance would rip the structure apart. Everyone inside would die. Hawke's hand slipped from her shoulder. His face drained of color. He did not grasp the physics, but he recognized certainty when he heard it. She turned back to the keyboard and continued, explaining that her actions would vent pressure from non-essential sections and use the station's maneuvering thrusters to disrupt structural resonance. It was the only possible path to survival. Her fingers resumed their relentless motion. She told him to move. He was wasting oxygen. The authority in her voice struck harder than any physical blow. Hawke staggered backward, his confidence shattered, confusion and dawning terror written across his face. His men stared, mouths open, and their eyes were no longer on him. Their attention had shifted. Authority had passed, not by rank, not by orders, but through the undeniable presence of a solution that could keep them alive. A muffled clang came from the corridor as Larson wrestled the seized coolant valve. On the small maintenance screen, a new stream of data scrolled into view. She issued her next instructions, her voice now the calm center of a storm of panic. Watch Officer, proceed to the environmental control panel. On my command, initiate emergency venting of habitation modules 3 and 4. Confirm. The young lieutenant, fear replaced by the faint stirrings of hope, ran toward the panel. Acknowledged. Engineering, she called, her voice carried through the emergency address system she had just brought back online. I am rerouting auxiliary power to the primary gyroscopes. Prepare for a full power, short-duration burn on my mark. A crackle responded from the speakers. Engineering acknowledges. Ma'am, who is... Stand by, she replied evenly, without inflection. The next 5 minutes unfolded like a masterclass in crisis management. She orchestrated the failing station with impossible precision, rerouting power, venting atmosphere, and adjusting hydraulic pressures faster than any human should have been able to manage. She was reshaping the station in real time, turning a brittle, inflexible hull into a structure capable of flexing with the coming wave of geological force. Hawke could do nothing but watch, stripped of arrogance, reduced to a trembling witness to her skill. The level of competence she displayed exceeded comprehension. It felt like magic. S-Wave arriving in 30 seconds, she announced, calm as if requesting tea. The station went silent, a tense stillness broken only by the rising hum of the gyroscopes spinning up. "Vent now," she ordered. The watch officer slammed the controls. A deep roar of displaced atmosphere surged through the hull as two entire sections were exposed to the crushing pressure of the ocean. The station shuddered violently. 10 seconds passed. Her eyes never left the screen. A single line of numbers scrolled. "Engineering, engage thrusters," she commanded. "Port and starboard vertical axis. Full burn. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." A titanic roar shook the station as the thrusters fired, a desperate, almost insane attempt to shove the massive structure sideways just as the secondary wave struck. This was not a simple tremor. The station lurched violently, thrown sideways in a brutal motion accompanied by the tortured groan of metal twisting under stress, like a chorus of 1,000 screaming demons. The lights died entirely, leaving them in absolute darkness. For a moment that stretched like an eternity, all that remained was the sound of grinding steel and the sensation of falling. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, it ended. Silence. A ringing, profound silence. Emergency lights flickered on, casting a dim green glow over the wrecked command center. The hull still groaned occasionally, but the worst had passed. A single green indicator blinked on a status panel. Stable. They had survived. In the center of the room, the woman rose slowly, her gaze sweeping across the stunned crew. Her expression betrayed nothing. She had executed what was effectively a miracle of physics and engineering, a precise command under absolute pressure. But she looked as if she had simply completed a mildly tricky puzzle. Understanding dawned slowly on the crew. Following her clear, methodical instructions, they began the painstaking process of assessing damage and initiating repairs. She moved seamlessly among them, her focus shifting from high-level strategy to hands-on technical work. Circuit boards that had fried under the shock were diagnosed with a glance. Bypasses suggested with such authority that even the most seasoned engineers shook their heads in awe. Hawke hovered at the edges of the room, a hollow shadow of himself. He attempted to reassert control, trying to direct the damage control teams as he had been trained to do. His men ignored him, turning instead to the quiet woman for direction. His authority had not merely vanished, it had been obliterated. He slunk to a corner, radiating cold shame. It took 16 hours to bring a single, low-bandwidth communications link back online to the surface. When the connection finally flickered to life, the first face to appear was that of Fleet Commander Whitaker, his stern visage carved from stone, embodying the authority of the institution itself. "Station Neptune report," Whitaker demanded, his voice taut with concern. "We lost contact. What in God's name happened?" Hawke saw an opening, a final, desperate attempt to salvage his reputation, to rewrite the story of the day. Hawke forced his way in front of the camera, putting on the mask of authority. "Fleet Commander, this is Hawke," he said, straining for the calm, commanding tone he did not feel. "We were struck by a seismic event. Severe. The station sustained significant damage, but the situation is under control. My team and I acted decisively to stabilize it." He chose his words with care. He did not lie outright, but he left out crucial details, crafting a narrative in which he was the hero, the man who held everything together. He planned to present the analyst's actions as a minor contribution, a helpful suggestion he had graciously implemented. Whitaker's expression was unreadable. "Your report is noted, Commander. I see a civilian is with you. Is she safe?" Hawke glanced at the woman standing quietly out of frame. "The analyst is unharmed, sir. Slightly shaken, but performing as expected." His condescension slipped back into his voice, an instinctive shield for a man trying to reclaim his broken pride. From the side, her voice cut through, soft but clear enough for the comm to pick up perfectly. "Fleet, Commander." Whitaker's eyes widened slightly and he leaned closer. "Acknowledged." Respect was there now, unmistakable. "I have isolated the station's black box recorder," she said. "It contains a complete second-by-second record of all system states, internal communications, and personnel commands from 1 hour before the event through the crisis. I recommend you review the data before accepting any field reports. The information is revealing." She did not accuse. She did not editorialize. She simply presented the facts, the cold, unarguable truth. Hawke felt the blood drain from his face. The black box would show everything. His panic, his ineffective commands, his attempt to dominate her, and her precise, life-saving interventions. He was finished. On the screen, Fleet Commander Whitaker did not look at Hawke. He looked past him, toward the woman still out of frame. His normally stony features softened, a rare flicker of something like reverence crossing his face. "Your recommendation is noted," he said, calm and precise. Then his gaze returned to Hawke, and the icy authority was restored. "Commander Hawke, stand down. Transfer operational control of the station to the senior officer present." Hawke blinked in disbelief. "Sir, I am the senior officer present." Whitaker's reply was flat, final, and devastating in its certainty. "No, Commander, you are not," Whitaker said, looking past Hawke once more. "Admiral, your official command was scheduled to begin next week, but circumstances have accelerated the timeline. The station is under your authority. Report back once you have completed a full damage assessment." The word "Admiral" hung in the air like a detonating truth. Hawke turned slowly, movements stiff and mechanical. His eyes fell on the quiet, unassuming woman in her plain gray fatigues, the analyst, the bureaucrat, the admiral, the architect of the station's survival and the witness to his total humiliation. His already pale face collapsed. Every remnant of pride, every fragment of identity dissolved in a wave of crushing, public disgrace. He saw it reflected in the eyes of his crew, not merely disappointment, but burning, undeniable contempt. He had failed, utterly, and had been revealed as a fool in front of everyone he led. The silence on the station changed. The tension and unspoken resentment of before were gone. This quiet was different, profound, absolute awe. The crew moved with new precision, their focus sharpened. They still gave her room, but now it was out of respect, not disdain. They observed her like a natural law, a force to be studied and revered, never fully understood. Her commands were few, her words measured, yet each was obeyed instantly without hesitation. Hawke was confined to his quarters, a ghost of his former self, awaiting transport that would end his career. He had become a living lesson, a monument to the dangers of ego. Days later, as the station slowly regained operational stability, Chief Larson found the Admiral alone, watching the tactical display just as she had on her first day. The numbers flowed steadily across the screens, calm and predictable. He stood quietly, gathering courage. "Admiral," he began. She turned her head slightly. "Chief, I wanted to say," he stammered, "I've been in the service for 28 years. I've seen a lot, but I've never, ever seen anything like what you did." He shook his head, still trying to process it. It wasn't just knowledge. It was something more. "How did you know? How could you stay so calm?" She faced him fully, eyes the color of a winter sea locking with his. "My father taught me there are two types of fear, Chief," she said, voice even and low. "There's the fear of the predator, the fear of the unknown. It paralyzes. It leads to panic, to mistakes." She gestured to the screens around them, calm and orderly, a silent testament to the mastery she had wielded. "And then there is the fear of the mathematician," she said, her voice steady. "The fear of the known. The fear of an equation that offers only one terrible outcome, if you do nothing." She turned back to the main display. "I was not calm, Chief. I was terrified. But my fear was of the numbers themselves. They showed me what was coming, the path of destruction, and the single, narrow, almost impossible route to survival. Her gaze drifted to the flowing lines of data. Numbers have no ego. They don't care about rank, about reputation. They simply exist, indifferent and absolute. She had spoken more to him in that moment than to anyone else on the station since she arrived. It was a gift, a lesson in clarity and truth. The fear Hawke felt, she concluded clinically, was the fear of the predator. He was afraid of losing control, of appearing weak. That fear made him fail. Larson nodded, comprehension settling like dawn in his eyes. The story of the Epsilon event, and the quiet admiral who had ridden the shockwave, became legend. Official reports sanitized it, of course, but the truth traveled through the fleet, whispered in encrypted messages and passed from officer to officer. It became a teaching tool at the academy, a cautionary tale for arrogant young ensigns. It illustrated the difference between the illusion of strength and its reality, and it reinforced the philosophy her father had lived by. True power is quiet discipline, not loud aggression. Competence alone measures a warrior. Assumptions born of ego and prejudice are the deadliest vulnerabilities in any fight. Her command of the deep-sea monitoring fleet was marked by precise, unyielding efficiency. Operational readiness under her watch reached levels no one had thought possible. Her subordinates quickly learned that she did not reward flattery, bravado, or theatrics, only results. She never raised her voice, never had to. Her quiet presence commanded more respect than all of Hawke's shouts combined. She had taught them the hardest lesson. The most difficult battle is not against an external enemy. It is the fight within, the struggle to master oneself.